someone who desires to date, you have to eventually get comfortable with rejection. It's gonna happen to the best of us. Everyone has been rejected. Not me, but everyone else has definitely been rejected.
No comment. Welcome to the friend zone, the only friend zone where there's a solution to get out of it. Today we have a special guest, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey, so my name is Diamond. I am a chemical biologist in training, but on the weekends I am a brunch connoisseur and a Pilates princess, and I am a close friend of Kojo for maybe about a year now.
Yeah, it's been about a year now I think about it. Time has really flown by. Yeah, so tell the people how we met.
Oh, that's a funny story. So I remember it was January 2022, and I had COVID, right? And instead of resting and recuperating myself, I guess, I decided that I was going to make my study plan for the MCAT. But I didn't really have many friends that was like studying for the MCAT at the time. So one of my friends that was here in Maryland, she told me like, "Oh, you should like just go online and try to find a study buddy." And I was like, "Girl, that sounds dangerous." But I tried it, and then shortly after I met Kojo, he's not that dangerous, I guess. And we continued to study for the MCAT together and go into the application cycle together. So he's definitely seen the rough side of me, I guess.
Yeah, you said you were looking for someone to study with the MCAT with, and your friend suggested that you go online and look for a study partner. And I was looking for the same thing. And I think I put a post on Reddit, and you were one of the first people that reached out to me. I think there was another person also, but their schedule didn't necessarily align with mine in terms of the study period. Yours did. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I exchanged contacts with you, and then we called each other to try to figure out like what our work schedule was so that we could figure out what time we would have to study together. And then we went from there. Yeah, I think that's how the story starts. And I mean, right now you're in Maryland, but I think at the time you were back home, if I'm not mistaken, or you were just coming from back home.
No, I was in Georgia the first time we actually talked, like on the phone.
We're in Georgia.
But I came back to. I am from Macon, Georgia.
Not Atlanta.
Not
Savannah.
from Atlanta. I'm not from Atlanta. Not Savannah. I am from Macon, Georgia, which is like an hour south of Atlanta, but it's not Atlanta. It's far from Atlanta. So yeah, so that's how that went. So then I decided to. I had my MCAT initially like in April, and I pushed it back a month, and I pushed it back another month. So that was a long few months of studying.
Yeah, so we had about 3-4 months that we set aside, I think between January of last year up until April, when we both had our MCAT date scheduled for. And we were pretty much on Zoom every night, at least every weekday night, going at it, flipping through Anki cards. What was the other software we were using that we paid for?
UWorld.
There was the other one with all those hard practice exams. I'm blanking on it right now. But yeah, spent hundreds of dollars on this MCAT software. And was it all for nothing? I think not. I think it panned out in the end.
No, it wasn't all for nothing. Yes, it did.
Yeah, but since then, I think I've only met you once in person, and that was when I came up to the DMV for a church conference.
Back in April. Yeah, back in April. And that was like such a chaotic day. Like I was driving down 270, and then my tire pressure light came on, and I am not a car person. All I know is I put my key in it, it cranks, I go. Um, and my tire pressure light came on. I was like, how? I don't even know how to put tire. I don't even know how to put air in my tires. It was just a chaotic day. So I had to pull over, figure that out, and then on the way back, it started pouring down, raining. It was chaotic, but we only met each other one time in person. Everything has been Zoom or
Yep.
FaceTime or
Yep.
phone call.
Everything.
Which is like slightly, that was like pretty risque of both of us now that I think about it. Like, we were sending each other money and we didn't even know each other.
Hey, you know
Like,
how I was about sending money
that's
to you.
dangerous.
I was making a big fit about it. I don't know if you recall.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. But I mean, I see why. I could have took the money.
I mean, true. To be honest, my people are known for scamming Ghanaians, and that 419, we don't play about that scam life, but I'm one of the better ones, I like to say. But besides that, we met the one time, and I mean, you mentioned how you took your MCAT a little bit later than I did. I don't know if you want to get into
Yeah.
that situation now.
I mean, I can talk about it. When you get over something emotionally, it's so easy to talk about. So, basically, and this kind of led me to talk, tell you about like one of the topics I wanted to talk about, which is like stress management in our 20s, because basically I got super duper stressed because I was working full time. I'm still working full time, but working full time at this mentally taxing, and I decided, hey, maybe I should take a month to myself. Still study, still go over things, but like really take care of myself, because there's no way I'm going to be able to go into an 8-hour exam in the state of mind that I was in. And yeah, I ended up pushing it back, and it ended up working out perfectly in the end because I still submitted my application and I did not burn out as bad as I, you know, was on the path to. So it all worked out perfectly fine. So I did take my MCAT like month and a half
Mm-hmm.
later than you. Yeah, so not that far off. But
Yeah, it still worked out. You were still able to get your primaries in, your secondaries, and now you're going to med school. But let's talk a little bit more about the stress process. I want to stay on this topic, or not the stress process, the stress that you go throughout the medical school process. You mentioned the MCAT. To me, I think the MCAT is probably the biggest hurdle in terms of the peak of stress that you'll feel um, during this whole process. What are your thoughts?
well, yes, I do think that the MCAT is a huge hurdle, but I also think something else that's stress inducing about this entire process is the overall anticipation, right? Like waiting every single day for an email or for, an interview invite or for an acceptance. Like, it's all very stress inducing. It's it's a feeling of relief, but it's very stress inducing at the same time, because it's just the wait. And the wait, it's not like 2 or 3 months. It can go up to 9 months for some people. Like, some people don't even know where they're going or when they're going until like June, July. And I'm very grateful that I found out pretty quickly that I was accepted, because that saves me some of the stress. So I always, like, my friends who are going through it right now, I keep them in my prayers, because it's just so stressful, and I don't wish it on nobody, to be quite honest, but we go through it because I think pre-meds are just neurotic at heart. So
Yeah, that's true. Besides that, how do you feel like your stress levels were throughout the primary process and also the secondary applications?
well, the primaries, it wasn't that bad, right? Because I was just like, okay, I'm done with the MCAT, and I already had been working on my personal statement, before the MCAT, just a little bit like touch and go type situation. So I remember I flew home. Was it July? I think it was like the weekend after the 4th of July or something. I flew home. And my family was like, "Oh, we're gonna go on vacation," and I was like, "Vacation? I brought my laptop home so I could work.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is not a vacation for me." So I was on vacation in the villa, like working on my personal statement, like sending it back and forth to my mentors. Like, that was indeed not a vacation. It was work, which I believe that is what led me to feeling so burnt out in the end. It's the fact that I never really knew how to take a break, and I didn't know how to manage things while working full time, because that's pretty hard in itself. So
No, it definitely is.
yeah.
And I actually remember around the same time, I also had a trip planned to Puerto Rico. And you said you were at the villa?
Oh, so when I went home, my family, we went to Florida. So my mom like rented out this suite and everything, and everyone was like gone out doing things, and I was in the suite just sitting there, just writing and typing and emailing, and it was a hot mess, but it all paid off. But it was definitely very stressful. And as far as the secondaries, I don't think I stressed myself out too much about the secondaries, because I only applied to 12 schools, because I personally was not about to apply to 20 plus schools, because one, I ain't got the money for that. Like, that's too much money. That's way too much money. So I believe that I alleviated some of the stress, as you know, as far as finances and everything, by just simply not applying to that many schools. And I also like emailed a few schools and was like, "Hey, could you please waive my fee?" And some of them did. Some of them was like, "Girl, no, it's only $50." And I was just like, "All right, whatever." And as far as secondaries, like, I didn't have the quickest turnaround. Like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have all my secondaries submitted in 2 weeks. No, it took me like a month or a little bit over a month to get all my secondaries in. And did I care? No, because your girl was tired. So
No, yeah. I mean, finances is a big part of this whole process. I've talked to several people during this time about what it was like before the pandemic, where people were flying out to schools. I mean, you had to be selective of which schools you wanted to go out to interview, especially if you had back-to-back interviews. Because let's say you apply to school on the West Coast, that's maybe $200-300 just to get there. Then you got to pay for your stay, unless maybe the school accommodates for that, but that's not always guaranteed. So the cost associated with this process, I mean, secondaries alone, you're paying like $50 to $100, sometimes even more per secondary. So you said you applied to 12 schools. That right there, if you're paying $60.
I only applied to 12
Yeah,
schools.
if you're paying $50 for each secondary, that's already $600. Plus your primaries, plus the MCAT. It's a lot. It's a lot of money that we put into this process. But it's also time. Time is another big factor when it comes to the stress levels. And you mentioned working full time. How was it? How do you feel like maybe you manage your stress working full time, or how do you feel like you could have improved that?
Okay, so I believe that stress during the whole application cycle, it's in happen. It's just about how you manage it and how you allocate your time. I don't even know if I got it out right, but um so I moved to Maryland September of 2021, and I started studying for the MCAT that following spring. So I didn't have much time to really get myself adjusted and get myself used to my new job, which is a very it is mentally taxing. It is a very hard job to do, and it's not physically exhausting, but it's mentally exhausting. So after working 8 hours and then having to dedicate like a block of time to studying, that wasn't going to work for me. So I quickly adjusted, and I told my boss like, "Hey, I'm studying for the MCAT. I am not going to be able to come in and work 8 hours every single day." And he was like, he thought about it. He was like, "Okay, whatever. As long as you get your task done, I don't care if you're only here for 1 hour. As long as you come here, get things done, leave, you're good." So when it came to juggling work and the MCAT, it was hard, but that part was doable because I had the support of my boss. And I had the support of my other coworkers around me, where if I like wasn't able to come in at a certain time to get things done, they would help me out. The part that did not seem very feasible for me was the fact that I completely removed myself from my support system, 700 miles away. I started a new job. Everything around me was new, and I'm embarking on this journey. And I didn't really have anyone to support me emotionally and mentally outside of my therapist. Like, I can really talk to my friends about it, because if I talk to my friends about, oh, the application process, they really don't understand the magnitude of it, right? And I'm also a first generation college graduate, so it was really hard for me to talk to my family about it, right? Because in their mind, they think, oh, you just put in one application and you're done. No, you have to apply to every single school. You have to pay for every single school, and you have to interview with many different programs. So I think the stressful part for me was just not really having the emotional and mental support outside of my therapist. So yeah, that was like the hardest part of it for me. The working, I have really good boundaries with my work life. I never really take my work laptop home unless I have something like a presentation to work on. I don't respond to emails after 5:30. So that part was doable. But moving 700 miles away from home, just graduating from college, starting a brand new life, and then doing something as hard as the MCAT and applying to medical school, that was pretty. I look back on it, that was very extreme with me, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, moving far away from home is definitely a big challenge, even as an adult. So I mean, oftentimes we forget that we're still young, we're still adjusting, we're still in a transition period. Um, but I want to go back to that support system. Let's talk about, what do you think can help people get through a stressful situation such as the MCAT process? You mentioned your support system. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe like any other people that helped you throughout this process?
It was helpful having, a study partner, even though they were in my computer, in Zoom, it was helpful having a study partner, because if they were stressed about something and talking to me about it, it's like I might not have said much, but I'll be sitting there like, yep,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I'm also very stressed. So it's nice to have someone where it's, you can just easily talk about it. But as far as building my support system, I had to be very particular about the mentors that I chose once I decided to embark on the path, because I didn't always receive the best advice from my mentors, and it wasn't very good. So I had to just find really good mentors. I decided to talk to other, because at my job there are other um people who desire to go to professional school or to go to graduate school. So sometimes just talking to them about it, not very much, because I like to keep my colleagues for the most part. But just talking to them about it, like, oh, like how did you balance research and MCAT, or how did you balance, you know, your social life and MCAT? Like, just talking to people about it. But also, like I said, I have a
Mm.
therapist, so that trumps all. The therapy, it helped, because, and another thing that helped too was talking to people who weren't really in the medical field, right, or who was not going into uh, graduate school, because it was nice to have people around me to remind me to take a break. So every once in a while, I would talk to my friends back home or my mom, and it would just remind me to take a break. So the support system, how I built my support system is just having good mentors, um, making some friends that were going along the same path as myself, making sure to have friends that was pursuing something completely different, nothing of the sort in comparison to what I'm doing, and yeah, a therapist, and that's my support system. That's it as far as career stuff.
No, I think that's great. Great advice for anyone that's going through stressful moments. Just transitioning as a young adult into adulthood. I know for myself, I saw a
Mm-hmm.
therapist back in 2021. that helped a lot with my mental growth, especially with this MCAT process. I took the MCAT first time back in 2020, and thankfully my score improved the second time around after studying with you. So, but I think even prior to that, the meeting with the therapist definitely helped to build the confidence in myself to get through the process. I mean, besides this, stress affects us in other aspects of our life. We know we're focusing mainly on med school stuff, but is there any other aspects of stress that you feel like young adults go through that often isn't talked about that you would like to highlight?
Mm. Well, right now, as a 23-year-old, most of the stress I've experienced has either been around school or career related things because I'm a very career driven
Mm-hmm.
person. That's like the bulk of my stress, just making sure that my future is set. Um, some of the stress has come from dating, I guess. I don't really let the stress of dating get to me so much, but dating can be a very stressful process, especially as you're growing into a woman or, as a, as you're just growing as a person, getting to know yourself better as a person and as an adult, and then having to bring someone else into that and make it work is, for me, it was stressful. So, and of course, my family, they stress me out too. At the age of 23, they stress me out a lot. So, um, for the most part, those are the only areas of life that I've experienced the bulk of my stress. What about you?
Oh, you turned the question back on me. I think dating
Yeah.
definitely is a big one. Um, you know, the funny thing is, you mentioned at the end how your family stresses you out. My family definitely stresses me out too. And funny enough, I didn't grow up talking about dating, but in grad school, I noticed my parents started asking me about, have I dated anyone? Who am I dating currently? I just found it hilarious that my parents would all of a sudden be interested on who I'm talking to or who's part of my love life. But yeah, right now I'm in a big transition, preparing for medical school and also moving out of Greensboro where I'm currently at. And if I'm being honest, I feel like the dating market here is trash. If I was in a bigger metro, a bigger city, maybe back home in Charlotte, things would be a lot better. But I think one thing I've had to learn is just to be patient with who I meet, because I mean, there's definitely I know for myself in the past I've definitely been very particular about who I want to date, but I've now kind of been more structured with what I'm looking for, and not been as
Mm.
I would say unsensibly picky about certain traits, but looking at what really matters to me, and having
Mhm.
non-negotiables and negotiables. I would say in the past everything used to be like a non-negotiable, but I realized you can't find that perfect person. So definitely keeping a more open mind. I think is
Mhm.
definitely something I'm looking forward to doing more, and not stressing too much about dating right now as I did in the past. Um, but besides that, I think managing friendships has been stressful for me too. I think as you transition to a big stage of your life, such as becoming a doctor, there's going to be certain friends that maybe not understand what you're going through, or just friends that may not understand um, what you're going through in your daily life. So I think setting boundaries for who you're talking to or what you're talking about is also very important. And that's something I've been doing since the end of last year into this year. So yeah, that's it for me. But you mentioned, family, and family is a sense of community that they bring. And I want to talk about, building community, building friendships as an adult. How do you feel like that's been now that you're in Maryland compared to back home in Georgia? Actually, let's just first start off with how does Georgia, how does Macon compare to where you are in Maryland right now?
Okay, so grew up in Macon, went to school in Savannah. Macon is a predominantly black um city. It's not really a rural area, but it's not the metro city like America, not like Atlanta. My tongue got tied, but yeah. So it was pretty easy for me to make friends in Macon because it was very easy to find someone who you could relate to on a cultural level back in Macon. And as far as in uh, Savannah, since I was in school, when you're in such a socialized setting, it's easy to make friends. It's very, very easy to make friends in college because, I mean, all of y'all just moved away from home and all of y'all are young adults. Everybody likes to party, everybody likes to have fun. You might not find lifelong friends when you first, get into college, but, just initially sparking those friendships, it was pretty easy for me because I'm also a pretty social person, I guess. And comparing it to where I'm at now, um, since I work full time, I haven't had a lot of time to like really explore the city that I'm in right now. Uh, but it's not like Macon in the sense of like predominantly black. Everyone has like the same cultural background. Here it's like super diverse. You're gonna meet a whole bunch of people, but it does not help that at where I work at, um, it's not very diverse. So when you're an adult and you spend 40 hours of your time in a certain location, it's only natural that you're going to form friendships with the people there, right? But um, I can't relate.
Sorry, repeat that. You said you can relate.
I, I, I can't with
Oh,
the
you
C.
can't relate both cities to each other. I
Yes,
got you.
yes, yeah. So I do have like some really close friends that I've met since I
Mm-hmm.
moved up here to Maryland. Um, but for the most part, I only have like what, like two, three, like people I consider
Mm-hmm.
friends here. So yeah.
Yeah. I think when I moved down to Greensboro, it's been almost 4 years now. Making new friends was a challenge. I knew some friends from that went to UNC Greensboro from Charlotte, but I wanted to expand outside of that circle. And grad school is just different from undergrad. You're not as involved in the on-campus social life, so that was very difficult. And then the pandemic hit
Mhm.
during the second semester of my first year, so everyone was stuck inside. So it wasn't until I want to say, after I graduated and the pandemic restrictions started to line up that I was able to kind of meet new people that I would consider friends now, and that was from joining, different groups or organizations, such as a local church. I think I told you how I started playing volleyball a little bit back in the last year.
Mhm.
So just getting out there has been very important. And I know you said for you, it's been a bit of a struggle, but I think if you're able to get
Mhm.
out there, find hobbies, find organizations that you
Yeah.
have a tie to, you can build that sense of community. Um,
Yeah. And actually, I was gonna come back to
yeah.
that, to finding different
Hmm.
hobbies and things that you like to do so you can meet new people, because I want to say over the past, or basically since I've been done with the MCAT, because you have to think about it. Like I moved to a different state, then I started working and I started studying for the MCAT. So I didn't have much time to, be out and
Hmm.
about and making a whole bunch of new friends. But once I submitted all of my secondaries and, primaries and took the MCAT, it became pretty easy for me to make friends because I had more time to do the things that I enjoyed doing. Like I finally started back going to the gym on a consistent
Hmm.
basis, and just from being in the gym for like a few months, the Pilates gyms, the free weight gyms, I have been able to meet so many people like just from that alone. And even when I go out, like if I go out to a bar or if I go out to, I love my tuna tartare. So I'm be at somebody's restaurant. I go to the restaurant. The people they come up and they talk
Mm.
to me like So just having more free time is also like a huge um it's a huge part in making friends as an adult, because if you don't have time and you work 8 hours and then you get off and you just want to go to sleep, you're not going to make any friends because you don't have much free time. So it has to be a priority, kind of. You have to make it a priority. Like, if you want it, you have to like prioritize it and say, okay, I want to meet new people, so I'm gonna join this gym and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna go out to eat alone and sit at the bar and just talk to people while I'm there, because I've definitely done that like numerous times. I did that on, I think, Thanksgiving morning or something like that. Like, I just went because my friend who I was supposed to celebrate Thanksgiving with, she had tested positive for the flu, and I had a med school interview that Tuesday. So I was like, okay, I'll go meet up with this friend later, like another friend, but I want something to do now. So I got dressed and I went to a bar and I had martinis, and this lady sat by me and we just talked for like hours. So that's we don't talk now, but it was fun for the day, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's interesting, but I forgot for a moment that you didn't go back home for Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
Oh, no. I didn't.
Yeah, okay. That's why I made that facial reaction, because I thought you were back home and then you
Oh,
went
no, it's
out
okay.
the morning of Thanksgiving. I was like, I don't know how that worked out.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I no, I stayed here for Thanksgiving because, I mean, one, I'm not going all the way back to Georgia just for Thanksgiving, because my family, they don't start eating till like 7 o'clock at night. I'm not flying 700 miles for that. I'm not doing that. But I also, like I said, my med school interview was the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, so I had to just stay in the house and get my mind right. I couldn't deal with the stress of traveling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And you mentioned prioritizing time to meet new people. That's actually something that, I've started doing this year. I've started scheduling time out on the weekends to, take a break from work, take a break and go out, take a break and go to a restaurant, like just doing something new here in the city. Especially since I've been here for about 4 years and haven't touched like half of the restaurants I probably should have touched by now. But yeah, definitely been more intentional about how I'm spending my leisure time here in Greensboro. And I think that's like something that people can definitely do if they're wondering, how do I make more friends? How do I get more plugged into a city? But yeah.
Yeah, being intentional overall is just the way to go about it, because we're never, if you wait until you actually have time to do things, you're probably never going to have the time. So you just have to like throw yourself out there, get used to talking to people, get used to being in uncomfortable situations. Like, I just um started boxing last week too. So I went to a boxing gym. So yeah, don't get too crazy, Kojo. But anyway, so yeah, I just went to a boxing gym last week, and I met so many people just from going that one time. And like, so many people was like, "Oh, you're a new face." This is like a smaller boxing gym, and of course, it was easy to see that I was new, because like I was definitely just throwing punches everywhere. So like, a lot of people approached me, and it was just really nice. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. You were probably boxing like a street fighter, weren't you?
well, when it comes to throwing, that's the easy part, but the hard part was definitely remembering which punch go with which numbers,
Oh, okay.
and like it would, and I felt like I was in basic training for the first 20 minutes. Like, the coach was yelling, and that was just like a lot, but it was fun. It was fun, and I'll definitely do it again since I'm
That's
able to.
good. That's good. And how much was the class?
My first class was free.
Well, there you go. If you are looking for a new activity to meet new people,
Go to
find a
box.
boxing class.
Yeah, boxing class.
Yeah, definitely. You also brought up an interesting thing that I was thinking about when you said that you went out to a bar Thanksgiving morning and a lady just came up, sat next to you. Y'all had a whole conversation. I know we're not going to talk about this much, but maybe another time. I don't think that would be the same for a man. And you know my perspective on on the differences
that's
between
another conversation for another time.
the differences between men and women when it comes to dating. But I think that's a very interesting perspective.
Dating? She wasn't trying to date
for
me.
sure.
She was just bored too.
Sorry. I mean, of course she wasn't trying to date you, but in terms of you going out to a social setting and meeting people, I think that's an aspect of dating, right there. So it doesn't necessarily apply exclusively to dating, but it's an analog of dating. But we're talking about. Well, I just mentioned the differences between men and women. Let's talk a little bit about something that a lot of men seem to struggle with, and that's incels, or being an incel. What's your perspective on incels?
Well, I just actually learned what an incel was maybe a year ago. Probably not even a year ago. So, I was on YouTube listening to this commentary video, and she was talking about this incel community on Reddit. So I was like, okay, I'm about to go look them up right now then. So I looked them up, and I read the post and I read the comments, and it was honestly quite disturbing because I couldn't believe what I was reading. So, an incel, by definition, is an involuntary celibate. So, it's a man who is celibate but is against his will, um, from lack of sexual partners, lack of sexual experience. Maybe they feel that it has something to do with their looks, um, or the overall way that they communicate with women in general. So it was a very disturbing thing for me to learn about because it's not only rooted in a lot of misogyny, but it's rooted in a lot of like racism too, kind of, because it's a lot of intersectionality going on there. Because when I went to the forum, I noticed that a lot of them tend to be younger white men, and they have a disdain for black women who are able to explore their sexuality. So it was pretty disturbing, but it was also kind of interesting to learn about because I didn't know that people self categorize themselves as involuntary celibates. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. So would you say that Reddit subreddit was or is a racist cult?
A racist
Yeah.
cult.
The way you described it makes it seem like one.
Would I call it? Okay, so I would describe it as a racist cult because all of the incels were not racist. Like racists can be incels, but all incels are not racist. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So, like, 'cause some of them they just hate women in general, no matter the race, no matter the ethnicity, nationality. They don't care. If you are a woman or someone who identifies as a woman, they do not like you, and it's just because of their experiences with rejection and just overall, I guess bullying too, because a lot of the men on the forums like describe them getting bullied in as a 12-year-old, and now they hate all women, and it's like, okay, did we all get bullied in middle school?
I did.
I did too, and I don't consider myself an involuntary celibate. Like that's crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may be even deeper than that, and I think maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a man myself. I can see why certain people would have that nihilistic mindset when it comes to dating, and I mean, before I even get into that, let's talk about the term involuntary celibate because I think it's a misnomer.
Hey, they call themselves that. No, they call themselves that. It's not me putting
No,
a label
but does the term make sense to you? Involuntarily celibate, like by definition, do you think that's actually possible to be involuntarily without sex or unable to get sex?
Yes and no. Um, I I say yes, it's possible because if you're not able to find a sexual partner but you desire sex, then I guess that would make you an involuntary celibate in some way, right? But at the same time, it's like if you are a young adult and you desire to have sex, there's someone out there. There is someone out there. There are people out there. You don't just have to lower your standards just to do it. But also, the thing that I noticed about the incel community was that a lot of the men, they also disliked other men for being able to, you know, build relationships with women to the point where they could have sex. Like they hate charismatic men. They hate attractive men to like conventionally attractive men because they feel like, well, what do they do to deserve that? Because one thing about incels is that they feel like everyone is deserving of sex, which that's problematic in itself. But so yeah, I say yes and no. It's possible to, I guess, label yourself as an involuntary celibate because if you don't have the sexual partners, or if you don't have someone that wants to have sex with you, then I guess it's involuntary.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think it definitely comes from a defeatist mindset. But like you said, there's there's ways they can have sex. I mean, we have prostitutes out there. So I think if we're just going based off of
Oh,
that, I like to break things down and make things very simple.
yeah.
So if we're just going based off of that, you can't be involuntarily celibate. I think it gets back to having that defeatist, it goes back to having that defeatist mindset in the sense that you're not able to get the woman that you want. So you rule out all women, even the women maybe you don't find attractive but are attracted to you. And you start, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
hating on men that are able to get the woman that you want. So it is sort of a cult in itself in the fact that also from what I have heard is that they don't like men who come in there trying to be optimistic about their dating standards. They want all men to have the same feelings, the same mindset up towards women and towards their dating prospects. So it's very defeatist in nature, and yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but that's the way I see things.
So I did not look into the forum long enough to
Mm-hmm.
notice if there were any men who was optimistic about dating. It just seemed like a whole lot of young, maybe between the ages of 12 and I'll say 25-year-old
As young as
men
12,
who experienced rejection. I think, yes,
they barely gone through
these
puberty.
kids were clear. There were some, yes, these kids, they are very, very
Yeah.
young and they are already taking this nihilistic approach to dating that, it's not healthy if you desire partnership. But also, I read uh this post in the forum, and it was like, oh well, I got bullied for like a bulk of my years in high school. So afterwards, I went to college, got a job, and I cut my hair and I started dressing differently, but women still didn't want me, so women must be the problem. So another thing that I'm noticing is that there's a lack of self-awareness amongst the individuals in this group. If every single woman that you come across has a certain level of disdain for you, then maybe it's time to look on the inside and, just think why. Because it can't be everybody else's fault but yours. If you're a 25-year-old man and you've never had sex and you've never experienced being with a woman romantically, it's up to you to get out there and find that, and for you to make the changes within yourself to somewhat make yourself desirable for women to want. Like, it's up to you. So yeah, it's a crazy community, but it's out there.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a whole study on incels. I don't know if you've heard of David Buss. in his evolutionary psychology department. He has a PhD researcher named William Costello, who's been on a few podcasts that I've listened to, and they talk in depth about this topic. But you just mentioned a possible solution for these incels, and they kind of allude to certain solutions for incels. But I think it's also important to understand how men think in general when it comes to dating and when it comes to sex. I think you understand that men are very sex driven. I think you have a saying that men will hit anything with breast and legs, something like that. And for a lot of men, you have to be able to have that discipline, not to act out on that native, instinct. And some men, especially these incels, get frustrated once they're unable to attract certain women. And I think most of them, they're getting frustrated by not being able to attract the ideal woman. And I think for them, it's, like you said, looking at themselves in the mirror and also understanding, you have to start from somewhere. You can't go from not having access to women at all and then start getting the 9s, the 10s of the world. You have to build yourself up, whether that's physically, whether that's by going to the gym, whether that's mentally by gaining more education, reading more, or whether that's just socially by going out more, hanging out, getting a group of friends that will be able to help you meet more women. So I think there's steps that people need to take, especially in the incel community, if they want to break out of that cycle. But foremost is not having that defeatist, nihilistic mindsets that a lot of the people in the community can have.
Yeah, it was honestly astounding how many of those people on the forum described one experience of rejection. They only experienced rejection like once or twice at the age of like 18. And they're like, yeah, women are horrible and they deserve all the bad things that happen to them. Even attempting to invoke violence among, towards women because of their personal experiences. And something else that I noticed is just they're not very comfortable with rejection, and I feel like as someone who desires to date, you have to eventually get comfortable with rejection. It's gonna happen to the best of us. Everyone has been rejected. Not me, but everyone else has definitely been rejected.
No comment.
Yeah, so uh you just have to be comfortable with that or just simply not being a good fit for another person. Like that happens to me like every other busy month. I realize that I'm not a good fit for some people, and you just take that with a grain of salt and move on. You don't have to sit around and be mad and upset over it.
Yeah, I agree. I think having that mindset not only helps you in the dating world, but helps you in life in general. So I'm going to take this time just to wrap up the show a little bit. Do you have any other comments you wanted to add, Diamond, before we close out the show?
I don't really have any comments. Just thank you for having me on, and I'm very honored to be a part of something that you've been talking about for a very long time. So, wishing you a lot of prosperity.
I appreciate it. I've been talking about this for, I think, about a year and a half now. So I'm glad that finally getting to invite some friends on this pod. And you'll actually be the second episode. And hopefully I'll have it out by midway through next week. So just look out for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
That's good.
This is the Friend Zone, and I'll catch you next time.